Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by LatinXcellence. Visit LatinXcellence.com. That's LatinX, CELLENCE.com or LatinXmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello, and welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis Rosa, and I'm your host. Thank you all for tuning in. Today, I want to talk to you about a little known secret, I'm going to call it, which are Series I savings bonds, who are basically government bonds that you can buy yourself directly at Treasury Direct. I was just recently interviewed for an article on MarketWatch where they asked me about where can people put their savings right now to earn a little bit more than what is available out there. You know, it's kind of crazy, but when you look at the amount of money that you get in a checking account, right, is 0.0 something percent. It's almost a joke. If you have a savings account, you might get, right now the average in the country is 0.60% average yield on a savings account, which is really not a lot of money. Right. So if you happen to have some cash that you have it, it's not something that you necessarily want to invest, but it's cash that you want to have relatively safe and accessible over the short to midterm. You kind of wonder, like, what should I do with my money? I don't want to just leave it sitting there in a checking account. Now, one of the places that I tell people to look at, depending on the goal, is let's look at how important safety and liquidity are, meaning you don't want to lose any of the principal and you also want to have easy access to it. So if you were to tell me, listen, I have money that I don't need for the next 5 months, because in 5 months I'm going to buy a house and I need it for this down payment, then obviously I wouldn't recommend that you invest that money because it's just not worth taking the chance that you might make some money in the stock market because you might be down by the time you need the money, right? So that type of money you want to put in a safer account. Now, if it's really short term, which is less than a year, you might just be better off leaving it, maybe finding a place like a high yield savings account, or maybe a short term CD, certificate of deposit, 6 months, 9 months. But even those are really not paying that much money, So there are situations when you just have some cash that you want to have it available. This is a great opportunity for some people to take advantage of the Series I savings bonds. These are bonds that are government issued, and they pay a percentage 6 months at a time based on what inflation is doing. The higher the inflation goes, the better the rate that they pay. Now, you don't hear about these a lot because especially, if you're not working with a fiduciary financial planner, you probably won't hear about these because these are not products that anyone can make money off of you on. You buy them directly from the government. So most quote unquote financial advisors that you might come across, they might sell you something as part of their jobs, right? So they're not going to tell you, hey, buy savings bonds because they're not making any money, which is very important when you're working with a fiduciary financial planner, which means somebody that has your best interests at heart. If you haven't listened to it yet, tune into my previous episode where I speak to Deborah Nason. She is a business reporter and wrote a book about the financial advisory business. Very important. We go into a lot of details to how to choose an advisor, what questions to ask, what is a fiduciary, and so on and so forth. So please tune into that to learn a little bit more about that. But ultimately, let me tell you about iSavings bonds, how they work. But let me give you the great news right now. They're actually paying 7.12% for any bonds that are purchased between November of 2021 through April of 2022. And you heard that right, 7.12%. Now, a lot of people might hear that and say, oh, that's not a lot because I can invest that in the stock market or cryptocurrencies and make more. And that may be right. So, but I want you to focus on the fact that I'm talking about not using this as an investment necessarily. I'm talking about using this as a saving strategy. This is for cash that you have that you may need maybe a year and a half to 2 years from now, right? Not cash that you want to put in the market, not cash that you are willing to risk anything for, right? So let's make that distinction. And number two, if you have a very large portfolio in your investment and you want to take some money out away from stocks and put it into some sort of bonds, this too might be a good strategy, right? Because if you want to have a diversified portfolio, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. So it's always good to have a mixed basket of investments within your portfolio. So if you are going to have some sort of fixed income allocation like bonds, this might be a good alternative. And again, some financial advisors might not be talking to you about this because they don't sell them, right? They can't make any money. They can't charge you on them, which is why it's so important to work with a fiduciary advisor that has your best interest at heart, regardless of anything that's out there, right? They don't sell any product necessarily, especially if they're fee only, right? So let's get into this. Let's talk about I bonds. So what are they? Series I bonds. They are interest-based things that are issued by the U.S. government, right? So a bond is kind of like when you buy a bond, you're basically lending money to the issuing entity. In this case, you're buying a government bond. So the government is an IOU. They're saying, okay, you give us $10,000 and we owe you $10,000, plus we're going to pay you interest on that money. And it's guaranteed by the U.S. government. So it's pretty safe investment, unless you think the U.S. government is going to default, right? Which if they were to do that, then we have bigger problems in general. So as of now, the way that the rate's determined, it's a combination of a fixed rate and another rate, which ultimately ends up being what they call the composite rate. But all you need to know, I'm not going to bore you with the details, that right now, if you go to the treasurydirect.gov website, which I will be putting in the links to the show notes here, so you can go for yourself, you can go and purchase a bond directly from the Treasury that's going to pay you a 7.12% annualized rate of return for the next 6 months for any bond that was purchased between November 2021 through April 2022. This is amazing. Now, there are some limitations that you need to know about. Right now, the maximum purchase is $10,000 total each calendar year. But this presents quite the opportunity because it's calendar year. We're, just a few weeks away right now from another calendar year, right? 2022. So if you have some cash in hand that you can afford to put away in this type of investment, one of the caveats to realize that this is initially, you cannot take this money out for the first 12 months, so 1 year. You can take it out anytime after that. If you do so anytime after 5 years and before 5 years, you basically forfeit the last 3 months of interest, which is not a huge penalty. So this is for money that you do not need for the next year after you buy them, right? But if you are in that scenario, you have that kind of cash in hand that you don't want to put in an investment, you want safety, you want a nice rate of return, this might be a great option. So think about it this way. A married couple, for example, can buy $10,000 each. That's $20,000. And then January 2nd or 3rd, buy another $20,000, right? And meet the $10,000 per person per calendar year. That's $40,000 that you can put into this thing at 7.12%. And if inflation goes down again and you get the worst case scenario, you don't get any interest, right? So you're locked in for the first 6 months. Every 6 months is going to give you a brand new rate for the following 6 months. So if inflation goes down, the next time they issue the yield, worst case scenario goes to 0% and you make nothing. But think about it. Even if you make nothing in the second half of the year, you made 7.12% for the first half of the year, right? So if you divide that by 2, you still made 3.56% for the full year on that money, which is still a lot better than any savings account out there. There are some savings accounts and even checking accounts that are paying anywhere between 3 to 5% right now. But there's a lot of caveats that you have to follow. Like you have to have direct deposit. There's like so many different rules. You got to have a certain amount of transactions per month. So you got to kind of like play that game. But if you're willing to, that's another option. You can go to one of these online banks, and kind of play that game and put $10,000 in there and follow all the rules and see if you can get some money. But this one is pretty simple. You just buy it, hold it, and then you don't have to worry about it. So what do you need to know? You can buy these directly from the government. The interest is taxable, just like any interest in the bank or any interest that you would make on, anything, savings account, et cetera. So obviously you got to know that you buy this, you're going to get a 1099 INT form at the end of the year, and you pay taxes on the interest. But that's fine. It's 7.12%. You can buy these both either paper or electronic. It's probably a lot easier to just go to treasurydirect.gov and buy them electronically. The maximum purchase is $10,000 total each calendar year. Plus, you can buy an additional $5,000 with your tax refund. So it's really $15,000 when you think about it. But the easiest way is to go to the website, buy $10,000, up to $10,000, and then you can do another $5,000 from your tax refund. They are available from $25 all the way up to $10,000. The electronic ones. The paper ones, it's $50, $100, $200, $500, and $1,000. So these are 30-year bonds, but you do not need to hold them for 30 years. The minimum requirement is that you hold them for 12 months. So you cannot touch this for 12 months. Then you can take them out anytime after a year. If you take it out before the 5-year mark, you give up the last 3 months of interest that you earned. And if you hold them for 5 years or more, then you get to keep everything. So this is a great opportunity for a lot of people to do some planning. You also can buy it in kids' names and in estate names as well. So if you do have a lot of extra cash that you don't want to risk out there, you might be able to use this as a strategy as part of your overall portfolio for your fixed income allocation. So definitely talk to your financial planner about that. I always get clients calling me like, "Hey, what should I do with this cash that I'm not looking to invest because right now everything's paying so little?" And this is what the great opportunity is. Now, the reason I focus on this too is because you don't necessarily need to invest all your money. I don't recommend that you do, because there are certain scenarios where you need to have different buckets when you think about it for savings. Your saving strategy and investment strategy should be based on buckets. Number one is your rainy day fund. Right now, like if you think about the impact of the pandemic, a lot of people found themselves in that situation. It was like, wow, whether it was a layoff or something like that, they needed a rainy day fund, or maybe what they had was not enough, right? So if you do have a rainy day fund, usually we as financial planners, for the most part, recommend anywhere between 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, not of your income, just like your basic living expenses. However, if you can do more, it's probably a good idea to do 6 months to a year if you can. Right now, a lot of people, they'll say, "Hey, why would I have so much cash just laying around, not earning much?" It's a valid point, and the reason is you're not focused so much on making interest. The reason for this is you need this money to be safe and you need it to be accessible, right? Safety of principal and liquidity is the number one thing, because when you lose your job, you want to be able to just make that transfer and use that money to cover you until you get the next job or unemployment benefits kick in or whatever, right? So that's one bucket. That's your short-term bucket. Then you also have your midterm bucket. Maybe you have a goal. You have a vacation plan in 2 years, or you have you're buying a house, so you need money for a down payment, or you're making a large purchase like a car. So it's something that you have a little bit of time, but you don't really necessarily want to put it out there and invest it either, because you don't want like the market to be down if you invested it by the time you need the money and then you lost some, right? And then the third bucket is the more long-term range. So those could be things like retirement, for example. And the longer you have, then that's one of the factors that are going to affect how much risk you can take. If you're 22 years old and you are saving money in a 401k that you are not expecting to need until you're 55, then you could probably afford to take a little bit more risk, right? And these are the kinds of things that you work out within the financial planning process to make sure that you are allocated properly depending on your goals, your different buckets. You develop an investment strategy with your financial planner. So think about it that way. You want to have the what if, rainy day fund, midterm, and then long-term buckets. And then as you do your budget and you allocate your different funds, you dedicate a certain amount of money to each of those buckets based on the time frame that you have and how much the goal is going to be, right? So if you have, let's say in this case, you're one of those people that happens to have, a year's worth of savings, for your investment expenses, you might be okay putting $10,000 into one of these I bonds, right? Or maybe you have money that you're putting away for your children. I have a lot of clients that want to put money away for the children, but not necessarily in a college plan. It's like, hey, listen, I don't want this money necessarily to be for education. I just want to have this money for them to use later when they're older. This might be a good option, buy an I bond, right now, 7.12%. Again, even if you don't make any interest for the other 6 months, it's still 3.56, which is still a lot better, right? So that could be a really good option there. So, go to the show notes. The website is treasurydirect.gov. Check them out, especially if you're listening when this first aired, which was in the second to last week of 2021. Might be a great opportunity for you to buy some now. I know, probably busy with holidays and stuff, but buy them now before the calendar year is out to still give yourself the window of opportunity to then still do another 10,000 per person in 2022. So this is another like last minute year in planning strategy. Once I saw, inflation was so high and the government was paying that much, I was like, I cannot let my audience not know about this, so check it out. If you have any questions, always reach out to me, Luis at onmywaytowealth.com. Thank you all for tuning in. I wish you and your family a great holiday season. I hope you have a great rest of your year. And if you have any ideas for topics or any people you'd like me to interview and you want to make an intro, I'm always open to that. I look forward to continue to provide you with great content for the next year. And catch you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.